The United States is the most powerful country in the entire world, and the leader of it, the president, is probably the most powerful man in the entire world. Well, maybe. He does have some competition. Anyway, he does have a lot of power over the American people and the entire world, and can pretty much destroy any country he or she wants, in just one tap of the nuclear button. But have you wondered, who are the greatest presidents of all time? Well, lucky for you, that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Well, if you haven't seen the video title, which I hope you did. This is Top 5 U.S. Presidents. Number 5, Dwight D Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a very tough guy. He was a 5-star general in World War II and led D-Day, or Operation Overlord, which was the Western Allied forces' advancement into France. In 1952, he ran for president and pretty much kicked Democrat butt. One of his first acts was to build the interstate system, which we know today as the highway system, and he enforced racial integration into the army, and he founded NASA to compete with the Soviets for the space race. He also increased the United States nuclear arsenal. In his farewell address, Eisenhower warned of the military-industrial complex, which is basically saying that private companies should not be able to make bombs or fighter jets. Problem is, no one listened to him, and we're in this weird position now. Number 4, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt is most famous for his conservation of national parks. He ran and won most of the northern states and had competition from the Democrats in the southern states, yet he still won. He was a hardcore Republican, but a bit more on the progressive side, allowing businesses to express and operate freely. He's also credited with the invention of the teddy bear, or at least he inspired it, because he said no to shooting a bear that was pinned down on a tree. He had asthma as a child, but he overcame it because of his toughness as he grew, and was an avid hunter, and he hunted lions and rhinos and many more exotic creatures, mainly in Africa and Asia. In 1906, he passed the Pure Food and Drugs Act, which basically means if you sell bad meat, that means more money for the government because you didn't follow the law. He also had a pretty cool mustache. He won the Nobel Peace Prize also in 1906 for negotiating peace between Russia and Japan after the Russo-Japanese War, and funded the Panama Canal, which changed world trade for the better. His face is on Mount Rushmore, so you know he's a pretty good guy. He was also a pretty nice president and achieved a good number of things in his presidency. Number 3 is Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was actually Theodore Roosevelt's 5th cousin, and the Roosevelts were a prominent family. He ran in 1932 during the early years of the Great Depression, and pretty much won on a landslide because the previous president, Herbert Hoover, did not do such a good job of maintaining the worst depression in American history. He served the most terms, which was 4 terms. He was previously governor of New York and was very popular in the state, and he led to the United States in a very big depression. No, not that depression, this depression, the Great Depression, which began with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and ended in 1941. He was a hardcore Democrat, unlike his 5th cousin, Teddy, and he enacted the New Deal, which made the government build more projects such as bridges and buildings, and which meant more people would get a job and money. He originally didn't want to put America in World War II, since it was still reeling from the Depression, but after Japanese forces attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, Roosevelt declared war on Japan and Germany, and officially entered the U.S. into World War II, which was a major boost to Great Britain, which was still fighting on its own. He also began and oversaw the early construction of the atomic bomb, but he never lived to see it because he died of cerebral hemorrhage in the brain. He was probably one of the most popular Democrat presidents, if not the most popular Democrat president of all time, but the actions of the two next presidents are far greater than what he has ever accomplished. Still a great guy, though. Number 2, George Washington. Pretty much everyone, or at least every American, know who he is. He was originally a land surveyor, and there were 2 myths about him. He had wooden teeth and chopped down a cherry tree as a child and said something about not lying and stuff. I don't remember exactly what he said. He served as a general in the French and Indian War, which some say he did start by ordering a shot fired in a French fort. We don't know for sure, but he won anyway. In 1776, when the colonies broke from Great Britain due to their taxation without representation, he was made commander-in-chief of all armed forces. He was a great general and most famous for crossing the Delaware, and in 1781 he encircled British troops with the help of the French Navy in Yorktown, a genius military strategist, and forced the British to surrender. He was a really great guy in general, and his military genius helped turn the tide in the war and led somehow a bunch of farmers defeating the most powerful nation in the entire world. When he ran for president, there was no really other competition. He was pretty much just selected by everyone prominent like Thomas Jefferson and John Adams because he seemed like the only guy capable. He's the only president to ever win an election unanimously by the Electoral College. This is the only time it's ever happened in American history. He was a great first president and enacted the Constitution to replace the old Articles of Confederation, which were pretty trash. And when people wanted him to be king, he didn't want to be king because he was too modest and humble. Honestly, he was a great guy just like all the other presidents, and his actions pretty much led to what the United States has become today. And if it wasn't for him, we might as well be a socialist republic under dictator Bernie Sanders. Sorry about that. Alright, here are some honorable mentions before I get to number 1. John F. Kennedy. JFK was very interested in Cuba. He smoked Cuban cigars, tried to overthrow their communist government because they were communist, and almost ended a near world war with help of the Soviets. Because no one wants to have a communist neighbor. But before he could do anything more, he was shot in a motorcade in Dallas by a communist. Screw him. Sorry about that. Next is Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was actually a famous movie star before he got into politics. And he was governor of California and ran for president as well in 1981. He won in both of them landslides. Reagan survived an assassination attempt and pretty much made relations with the Soviet Union for the better and pretty much ended the Cold War, though he wasn't present to see the Soviet Union fall in 1990. He also teamed up with the Soviets to save 3 gray whales stuck in Alaska. They made a movie about it. It's kind of good, actually. Next is Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States of America. He was the main author of the Declaration of Independence, the document that pretty much everyone knows that broke the USA from Great Britain. And he signed the Louisiana Purchase from France and bought it, which greatly expanded the U.S. And he also sent Lewis and Clark, 2 famous explorers, off to the West Coast in search of new land and what they could do with it. Harry Truman. Harry Truman was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's vice president and oversaw the conclusion of World War II, which ended with the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In his first election ever, he managed to win, but he was pretty close actually, The Republicans and Thurman gave him a pretty good fight. And he oversaw the Berlin airlift, which helped East German citizens get food and supplies from Western air forces. And this really made the Soviet Union very mad, especially Stalin. And this was pretty much the beginning of the Cold War. He also oversaw the early days of reconstruction of Europe after World War II. Woodrow Wilson. Not many people know this, but he was actually the only president to ever earn a PhD. He pretty much won the elections in 1912 in a landslide. And pretty much all he is known for actually is just putting America and the U.S. in the World War I and founding the League of Nations, a committee of nations organized to prevent any future conflict. Well, that didn't really end so well. Sorry, Wilson. Now it's for number 1. And you probably knew this, it was Abraham Lincoln. You probably knew it. It's a no-brainer, honestly. He was pretty much the greatest president and led America to victory in the Civil War, the bloodiest war America's ever seen. He grew up in a log cabin and was both a lawyer and served in the House of Representatives. He was a hardcore Republican like Roosevelt and won the elections, which is pretty good actually. He spoke out against slavery, which was getting really unpopular in the North, but getting really popular, or staying really popular in the South. The Southern states liked slavery, so they sort of broke off from the Union. And then the dominoes began to fall, and then the Civil War took place. But Lincoln's leadership led America through its greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis in its entire history, and pretty much made the U.S. what it was today. He reunified the northern and southern states, and all was well in the country. Until less than a month later, then John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln in Ford's Theater. No! Lincoln was probably the greatest president in all of American history due to his amazing actions which led to the reunification of the United States and led America to become the superpower that it was today. And that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you like it. I know there were some few errors in my voice. My mic pretty much sucks. I have to get a new one, I guess. And this is like my first time making these type of videos, so yeah. And yeah, I really hope you liked it.